Hi everybody, Mrs. Kane here. I'm going to show you how to make a clay owl. Okay, we're going to be using clay from the earth. So this is natural, so it's a little bit different than Play-Doh to work with. It's a little bit harder, so you have to work with your fingers a little bit more, okay? And it is dirty, right? It gets kind of dusty. So make sure you put a piece of paper down to protect your table, and then don't worry about your hands. They're gonna get a little bit dirty, but when you're all done, you'll wash them up, okay? I'm gonna switch to my document camera, and I'm gonna show you how we're going to make a clay owl. Okay, so first, you have a piece of clay from me that you brought home. If you are working with this and you brought it home, I had it in a piece of paper towel that was wet, so it might be really kind of slimy. If it's really bad, just take a paper towel and wrap it up just for a second, a clean paper towel, and then just take it off. It'll get some of that slimy film off. I did that because when you're transporting this from home, I didn't want it to dry out on you, okay? The more you play around with this in your hands, the drier it's gonna get. And so you don't wanna do it too much to the point that your clay is really dry and fragile and kind of cracking, okay? So take the clay that you have, and just in your hands, you wanna just make it into kind of a ball. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? And then what you're gonna do is we're gonna make what's called a slab. A slab is a flat piece of clay. You want it to be flat, just like think about a piece of slab concrete outside on the sidewalk, right? You just want a flat piece of clay. To do that, you're gonna set this ball on your protective paper, and you might wanna stand up for this. You wanna push down as hard as you can, okay? And then flip it. You wanna flip it over so it doesn't stick really bad. And also it helps you make a consistent thickness. So I'm pushing all the way around my circle, and then I'm gonna flip it over. And then I'm gonna push around the circle, and then I'm gonna flip it over. And I keep flipping it because it really helps it stay the same thickness all the way around. Makes it nice and even. And sometimes if you're working with brand new clay that you just got, it can be a little bit sticky. That's something else the paper really helps with, okay? So it doesn't stick to our table or our surface that we're working on, okay? So go ahead and keep pressing down, all right, until you have kind of a circle, almost like a pancake, right? A little bit thicker than a pancake. This should be about as thick as your finger. Okay, so my finger is going to be a little bit bigger than yours, so about as thick as your finger, okay? I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to take a knife, the plastic knife that I have in there, and I'm going to cut out a curve, not quite the letter U, right, because it's sort of stretched out, but I'm going to cut out a curve from the top, okay? That's making the horns on the top of the owl just like we painted in class. Remember, we learned the ears are actually tucked inside underneath all those feathers. But the great horned owl has these horns that come up, and sometimes even different owls have a little bit of feathering up there. All right, so now we're going to use this clay, and I also probably included for you a little extra piece, but we're going to use this clay first to make all of our details. So we know, because we painted owls in class, that we want to make eyes and the wings and a beak. Okay, so we want to add all of those parts to the owl. Now your owl might not be the exact same circular form as mine, right? They're all different. We have some that are longer, we have some that are taller and skinnier. Don't worry about that. This is going to be unique to your project. It does not need to look exactly like mine. Okay, I expect that everybody's is unique. So I'm going to take a little piece of the extra clay to make my eyes, and I'm going to roll it between my hands, and then that makes a little ball for the eye. Our instinct is to just do that, and okay, I stuck my eye on. But when clay dries, it becomes more brittle, and this will actually dry and just fall right off. So whenever you're attaching two pieces of clay, you need to do something called score and slip. For us, we're just going to use water for our slip, and you're going to use a fork to create the scoring. Scoring means to make a little bit of a rough texture. So I'm gonna take my fork and I'm actually gonna scratch up the back of the eye. And I'm also gonna use my fork to scratch where I want this to go. Now, if the fork is hard for you to use, you could also do the same exact thing with the knife. We're just making a little rough texture for the two pieces to stick together. Then I'm gonna use one finger of water and make a dab on each piece. I'm not trying to rub away those scratches I just made. I want those to stay. We're creating almost what's called like a suction cup, right? When these dry, creating a suction cup with that little bit of water and those rough scratches so that that will stick together really good, okay? And I'm gonna make another one. I'm gonna roll them together. And you know, maybe one of them is gonna be a little bigger than the other, maybe they're the same, depends on how you're gonna design your owl, okay? And again, you wanna score both pieces of clay that are gonna touch. So whenever we have two pieces of clay that are touching together, we want to score both pieces. So this is what's different, because when we work with Play-Doh or modeling clay, we don't do that, okay? So that's what's different about working with this natural clay from the earth. Okay, so now I've got my two eyes, and I need to make a beak, and I need to make some wings. There's a couple different ways that you could do that. If you want to make a slab, you can take your clay and you can flatten it out into a slab, and you can cut out whatever piece you want to attach onto here. So I'm going to cut a triangle for the beak. That's one way of doing that, right? If that's confusing, you could also just take a piece of clay, small piece, roll it into a ball, and then use your fingers to shape it, just pressing lightly to kind of mold it into the shape that you want. Okay, so either way, you can cut from the slab or you can mold it with your fingers. Okay, now if I want to attach my beak, I have to do the same thing I did with the eyes. I have to score, and I have to score both spots where it's going to be going. And I'm going to add a little bit of my slip, just a little dot of that water, and then stick it down. Okay, so I'm going to add some wings. With this, I'll do the molding technique. I'm going to just roll a little ball. And I think I'm just going to shape out, I'm pressing between my two fingers here, right? So one's on the back and one's on the front. And I'm just kind of using my fingers to shape the clay how I want it. So if I want to make two wings that are about the same size, I'm going to take the similar amount of clay, and I can just check them out next to each other, see if they match up pretty good, pretty close. And the same thing, when I attach these, I want to make sure that I score and score where it's going to go, slip and slip, and then stick it on. Now you can make some little talons. I can show you that really quick. Just be careful if you make them too small, the little feet, the talons, they will tend to break off very easily. So just be careful with that, especially when you're sending the clay back to me to put in the kiln. You want to bring your clay project back to me in some sort of little box or hand carry it. Do not stick your clay project in your backpack, because it will for sure crack. As the clay starts to dry, it becomes very brittle and can crack very easily, okay? All right, two more things I'm going to show you really quickly. If you want to make some little designs, you can also make what's called a coil, okay? And to make a coil, I'm just going to kind of flatten my clay out a little bit. I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see on the document camera. And this is optional, right? You don't have to do this part for your design, but you're going to roll a coil. It's just like a clay snake. You're rolling from here on the heel of your hand to the fingertips, okay? And if you're rolling a longer one, you would use both hands, but we're just gonna make kind of a little baby one. And so I'm rolling on the table, not in between my hands, because the table of the surface is nice and flat, or surface of the table, sorry, is nice and flat. And so I'm gonna roll onto there so I get a nice, even, consistent coil, okay? You can use this, I'm actually gonna cut this one right in half. You can use this for additional little designs, right? So maybe I want to add just a little design around the edges. Again, if I'm gonna attach this coil onto there, I need to scratch it up, score it with my fork, okay? Add my little dab of water, and then I can stick it on as just some additional design, okay? And I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Make sure I scratch that up with my fork. I have to score it, water and water to the slip, and then you're gonna attach it, okay? All right, and if you wanna add some little feet, you can use your extra clay and you can make those, okay? Okay, one more thing before we're done. You can do two things to add more details, okay? One, you may want to smooth out some of these little cracks that you've made if you have some additional little texture marks from the scoring. And you can do that just with your finger. If it's really bad, or if your clay is really starting to get quite dry, take one finger in your cup of water, and then you can use that to smooth out some of the cracks. For young students, I want you to remember, don't go too crazy with the water, because sometimes we start thinking, oh, I need to smooth this, and then we end up dousing our whole clay project in water, and then it gets kind of melty, and it can actually crack worse in the end. So just a little bit. Notice I'm still working right now with just that first finger of water. I'm still working with that, still enough. Okay, so until it seems like you just really need more, just work with that first dab of water. If you need a little more after that, then you can go ahead and get another dab on your one finger and just keep trying to smooth out any little cracks or things that you might want to get rid of, okay? Also remember, right, we're young artists and we're learning and we're practicing and we're being creative. So if you have some cracks in yours, that's okay, right? It's okay if you have some cracks or some little imperfections, because that's what makes it so special and beautiful. Okay, the last thing that you might want to do is you can take a pencil, a colored pencil, regular pencil, and you can use this to make little textures. Be careful when you're doing this that you don't push too hard, because you don't want to push all the way through your clay. So if I wanted to add a little pupil, I can just make some little dots. I can make some little marks with my pencil to add some design features to the owl. So if you want to show some dots or maybe some little marks for feathers, maybe I'm going to show a couple little marks for my feathers. You can carve into the clay right? But just being careful that you don't press too hard, okay? Now, this is all you have to do to create your clay owl. If you want your owl to be hung up on the wall as a wall hanging, you're going to need to put a hole in the middle, okay? So right up here, I'm gonna need to put a hole. I'm gonna take my pencil, and in that one spot, make sure you're not too close to the edge. You're gonna push all the way through, and that's gonna make a hole. On the back, you can use your finger to just smooth some of that out. And even if that doesn't get totally smooth, that's okay. You can use your pencil to kind of straighten that out if you want to. That's only if you want to hang your owl up, okay? So that's optional. And then what you want to do is bring your owl back to me in a little box. Don't put it in your backpack, and I'm going to fire it in the kiln. When it comes out, it will be white and it will be hard, almost like a cereal bowl kind of material, okay? It will be hard and it will be white, and then I can give you some paint in class so that you can paint your clay owl. I hope that you enjoyed creating using clay, and I can't wait to see what you made. See you soon.